Breaking news shakes the heart of Hollywood tonight. After years of keeping their love quietly tucked away from the world, Dakota Johnson and Chris Martin have reportedly called it quits. The couple who once seemed inseparable, the woman who was believed to be the muse behind Coldplay's most heartfelt melodies, and the man who once said she was as calm in the chaos, are now walking separate paths. But what truly happened behind those closed Malibu doors? And how did one of the most private relationships in Hollywood reach its silent end? Stay with us till the end, because what we found will leave you stunned. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to HOLLYNEWS TV for the latest exclusive updates from inside Hollywood's most secret circles. Now, let's get into the story that everyone's talking about, the end of Dakota and Chris. For years, Dakota Johnson and Chris Martin were Hollywood's mystery couple. They weren't the type to flaunt their love at red carpets or post lovey-dovey selfies on social media. Instead, they kept things quiet, intimate, and real. Fans admired their privacy, calling them a refreshing break from the spotlight-obsessed culture of celebrity romance. But behind the serene smiles and the Malibu sunsets, cracks had begun to form. Insiders now reveal that this wasn't a sudden breakup. It was something building for months, maybe even years. It all started with what seemed like small differences, career schedules, time apart, and their differing visions of the future. Dakota, known for her indie spirit and passion for artistic projects, was deep into filmmaking and producing. Meanwhile, Chris Martin, frontman of Coldplay, was planning another global tour. Their love had thrived on distance once, but this time, it became a wall. They were living in two different worlds, a close source shared. They loved each other deeply, but love alone wasn't enough anymore. And yet, there were no public fights, no dramatic statements, no explosive rumors, just silence. The kind of silence that speaks volumes. Fans began to notice subtle shifts. Dakota was seen more often without Chris at industry events, and Chris, once vocal about his admiration for her, grew unusually quiet. Then came the whispers, rumors of long separations, missed holidays, and space to think. The first sign something was off came earlier this year when Dakota appeared solo at several red carpet events. When asked about Chris, she smiled politely, deflecting the question. Then, Chris Martin was spotted in London with friends, no Dakota in sight. Sources claim the two had been living separately for months, trying to figure things out. But eventually, the inevitable came. The quiet breakup. No statement. No public drama. Just the end of an era. Midway through this story, you might be wondering, was there someone else? Was infidelity part of the reason? Multiple insiders close to both stars say no. This wasn't about betrayal, it was about burnout. Their relationship, while loving, became weighed down by distance and emotional fatigue. They were each other's piece for a long time, another insider explained, but sometimes even peace turns into stillness. They both needed to move again. Behind the scenes, friends of Dakota say she struggled with the decision. She adored Chris's children, Apple and Moses, and had become part of their blended family. She often described her bond with them as one of the greatest joys of her life. The breakup, sources claim, wasn't just between two people. It was the quiet unraveling of a family dynamic that had been years in the making. But here's the twist. Some believe this may not be the final end. Hollywood insiders have seen it before. Couples part ways only to find their way back. There's still a lot of love there, one insider revealed. They just need time. They've always done things their own way, and if they find their rhythm again, no one would be surprised. As the news spreads, fans across social media are in disbelief. Hashtags like #Dakota Johnson, #Chris Martin, and #Coldplay Heartbreak are trending worldwide. TikTok is filled with emotional edits of the two. Dakota smiling backstage at a Coldplay concert, Chris dedicating "My Universe" with that unmistakable spark in his eyes. For many, this isn't just celebrity gossip. It's the end of a love story that felt quietly genuine in an industry of spectacle. But let's rewind for a moment to when it all began. The year was 2017. Rumors swirled when Dakota was seen attending several Coldplay concerts. Their chemistry was instant but hidden, wrapped in secrecy. Chris, still healing from his high-profile split with Gwyneth Paltrow, found comfort in Dakota's calm energy. She, in turn, admired his artistry, his humility, his dedication as a father. Together, they built something rare, something private in a world obsessed with exposure. Their relationship was never about paparazzi moments. It was about Sunday mornings in Malibu, family dinners, and quiet escapes to the English countryside. When they bought their shared home overlooking the Pacific, fans believed this was it, the forever home. But forever, it seems, had other plans. Industry sources whisper that pressure from fame may have played a bigger role than anyone expected. Chris, balancing Coldplay's massive global commitments, was constantly on the move. Dakota, navigating a career that demanded emotional depth, needed grounding. Their love, though strong, was stretched across continents, time zones, and constant spotlight speculation. At some point, even the most beautiful song reaches its final note, and then came the final straw, one that sources say was mutual but heartbreaking. Dakota reportedly wanted stability, a family of her own. Chris, ever the dreamer, wasn't ready to settle down again. They wanted different things at this stage in their lives, the insider said softly, and neither wanted to hold the other back. Still, there's something hauntingly poetic about their parting. It wasn't bitter. It wasn't loud. It was simply human. Two people who loved each other, but who outgrew the version of life they built together. That's perhaps what makes this breakup so devastating. It wasn't failure. It was evolution. As we reach the climax of this story, one can't help but wonder, will they ever reunite? Those close to them say they've agreed to remain friends. Chris continues to pour his emotions into new music, and fans speculate that his next album might hold traces of Dakota's shadow in every lyric. Meanwhile, Dakota is said to be focusing on her production company, diving deep into projects that reflect independence and self-discovery. If you've stayed with us this far, here's a thought. Maybe love stories don't always have to end with forever. Maybe the beauty lies in the fact that for a time, two souls met, changed each other, and then let go when the time was right. For Dakota and Chris, their love wasn't about perfection. It was about authenticity. And that's something Hollywood rarely gives you as the credits of their love roll quietly across the Malibu horizon. Fans can only hope that, one day, we might see them together again. Older, wiser, maybe even smiling at what once was. Until then, their silence speaks louder than any headline ever could. What do you think? Was this breakup inevitable, or just another chapter before a comeback? Drop your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe to HOLLYNEWS TV for more exclusive updates, behind-the-scenes stories, and the real truth behind Hollywood's most talked-about romances. Because in a town where love stories fade as quickly as the spotlight, Dakota Johnson and Chris Martin's quiet heartbreak might just be the most human story of all. Rumors surrounding Dakota Johnson and Chris Martin's breakup continue to dominate Hollywood headlines, but behind the glitz and speculation lies a story far more emotional and far more human than a typical celebrity split. According to multiple insiders, this separation didn't come from anger, betrayal, or scandal. Instead, it was the quiet realization that love, even the most genuine kind, sometimes isn't enough to bridge two very different lives. For those who followed Dakota and Chris for years, the news feels like a heartbreak wrapped in silence, a soft goodbye from one of the most grounded and private couples in the entertainment world. Dakota, known for her effortless grace and magnetic calm, has always been the type to keep her private life away from the noise. She never sought validation from the spotlight, never needed her love story to be on display. That's part of what made her relationship with Chris Martin feel so authentic. While other Hollywood couples were busy curating their love lives online, Dakota and Chris chose simplicity. They built their happiness in quiet moments, cooking together at home, walking barefoot on Malibu sands, spending time with family. Yet, somewhere between the songs and the silence, something shifted. Chris Martin, the poetic soul behind Coldplay, is no stranger to emotional complexity. After his highly publicized, conscious uncoupling from Gwyneth Paltrow, Chris vowed to keep his next relationship sacred and low-key. With Dakota, he found the peace he was searching for. She understood him, and he admired her depth and independence. But as the years went by, distance began to take its toll. With Chris constantly on tour and Dakota busy with back-to-back filming and production work, their once effortless connection began to strain under the weight of time zones and demanding careers. According to those close to them, they tried, really tried, to make it work. Earlier this year, they even took a quiet trip to Portugal to reconnect. To the public, the photos looked romantic and carefree, but insiders now say that behind the smiles, the couple was facing the inevitable truth. The love was still there, but the timing was no longer right. Dakota reportedly wanted something more grounded, a family, a sense of permanence. Chris, ever the dreamer, wasn't ready to slow down. The decision to part ways, sources say, was mutual but deeply emotional. They didn't stop loving each other, one insider revealed. They just realized love alone wasn't enough anymore. Even after the breakup, traces of connection still linger. Just weeks before the news broke, fans spotted Dakota quietly attending one of Coldplay's concerts in Los Angeles. Standing in the VIP section, she watched with a bittersweet smile as Chris performed Yellow. At one moment, he paused, smiled faintly, and said, "This one's for someone very special." The crowd erupted in emotion, and for a second, it felt like time had stopped, like love was still there, living in the melody. Dakota, meanwhile, is channeling her focus into her own evolution. Fresh off the success of Madam Web and several indie projects, she's been expanding her work as a producer, creating films that explore independence, femininity, and emotional truth. Chris, on the other hand, has thrown himself into music, reportedly working on songs that capture the feeling of love lost but not forgotten. Insiders describe his new material as some of his most heartfelt work since Ghost Stories. Hollywood media has been quick to label their story as the most peaceful breakup of the decade. In a world full of messy splits and online drama, Dakota and Chris chose quiet dignity. No social media unfollows, no cryptic posts, no bitterness, just respect and closure. They didn't destroy what they built, they simply let it rest. But fans aren't ready to let go. To many, Dakota and Chris represented something rare in the industry, a love story untouched by publicity, proof that authenticity still exists in Hollywood. On social media, hashtags like #DakotaJohnson, #ChrisMartin, and #ColdplayLoveStory have flooded timelines, filled with tributes, edits, and heartfelt messages. They were the definition of real love, one fan wrote. No drama, no show. Just two souls who found each other in the noise. Interestingly, those closest to the couple haven't ruled out the possibility of reconciliation. Chris and Dakota are deeply spiritual, one longtime friend said. They believe in timing and energy, in life coming full circle. This isn't a breakup born out of anger, it's space. And sometimes space brings people back together. Those words have sparked new hope among fans who believe that maybe, just maybe, this isn't the final chapter of their love story. For now, both stars seem at peace. They still follow each other on social media, still share mutual friends, and reportedly remain in contact. There's no tension, just quiet affection, like two people who understand that love doesn't always have to end in forever to be meaningful. They will always be part of each other's story. A close source confirmed. Some say Chris still plays the guitar at night, softly strumming songs that remind him of her. And somewhere across the ocean, Dakota might hear one of those songs on the radio and smile, not with regret, but with gratitude for what they shared. Because maybe love, in its purest form, isn't about lasting forever. It's about impact. It's about connection. It's about two people who met at the right time, loved each other deeply, and had the courage to walk away with respect instead of resentment. For Dakota Johnson and Chris Martin, this isn't the end of a failed romance. It's the closing note of a timeless ballad. A reminder that even in Hollywood, where stories often end in chaos, there's beauty in endings that whisper instead of explode. And perhaps, someday, when the world least expects it, the stars might realign. Until then, their love story will live on, not in tabloids, but in the quiet moments, the songs, and the hearts of those who still believe in a love that can be both private and powerful.